We're back with another video with Matt Dye from Land and Legacy, where we did a collaboration and just a walkthrough and consultation on the farm here in Missouri that we're on. And in this video, Matt addresses some invasive species that we have on this farm, and I realize each region is different, every farm is different with invasive species. We may not have certain ones that you could have on the other side of the state or a different state for that matter in the Midwest, but Matt just goes through the farm and addresses the invasive species and how we'll treat them on this particular farm. So take it with a grain of salt. Every farm is different, like I said, and it was very interesting to me and Mike as well, and just seeing what invasive species we had and just really how to address them.
So like here you can see there's quite a bit more fescue base on this side versus up there.
Yeah, and parts of this too, like on this side as well. At one, like in the beginning years, we tried to plant it.
Okay.
This is one of those old food plots.
And so like we're looking at the composition that's in here. There's a little autumn olive, a little bit of Multiflora Rose, a little bit of fescue smooth brome still mixed in this, but at the end of the day, this is 85–90% good, valuable species. Sometimes the non-natives, especially in the spring early, they pop out and it's like, oh gosh, I need to do this. Sure, they can be addressed and should be addressed, but at the end of the day, take pride in the 85–90% that's here, because this again is extremely valuable and not generally commonly found, right? Mm-hmm. And so continue to promote this as a whole system, and not just the fact that yes, it's native grass with shrubs and brambles, and at an amount that's significant enough to increase forage, increase nesting opportunities, all around a really high quality site. It doesn't look like much this time of year. It's kind of like the worst time to see it.
Sure.
But very functional throughout spring, summer, and fall as native grass, and most of the structure is standing back up. But you know, this whole center portion of the farms, we're looking back towards the cabin. It's like, this is a prime, let's say, habitat area because of all those species kind of coming together. You compare this side by side to close canopy timber, worlds of difference, right?
Yeah.
Valuable here. You need it all, but I love seeing this.
And we've done very little outside of fire to really enhance it. I mean, just fire, and then we've attempted to control some of the invasives, but overall, outside of that, like, not much else has been done.
And I'm sure at some point, right, the cool season grass was established here previously being a cattle farm, but through burning and through time and not someone liming and fertilizing the cool season grass, these natives have begun to pop, and then that additional fire and timing of the fire has allowed them to promote that much more.
Mm-hmm.
Even worthwhile, prior to going in and cutting any of this to promote the bedding, UTV or just even an ATV boomless sprayer, just weave your way in and around and spray out as much fescue as possible. That way when you open it up, you're not giving light to just, hey, more fescue. You've killed it with herbicide first, and then you drop the tree structure in and then continue to burn. Natives are going to come in here just like they will everywhere else that you've shown, hey, fire and getting rid of cool season grass. So you can have that expression native-wise coming in, as well as the down tree structure.
Mm-hmm. When would you spray it?
This, I mean, on a normal spring, mid-April, late April, but right now, you've got 2 more weeks, and you can get in here, and it's going to have enough, let's say, growth that it's going to come up and above the thatch line, that you've got enough contact with herbicide to be able to adhere to the fescue and kill it out. So we're kind of the early stages of it, but you're 2 weeks away with the forecast we've got to be able to knock it out. All right, guys, so you just executed a wonderful burn yesterday. We got smoke in the background from some down logs. Very successful.
Yeah,
it moved through. Had great conditions, good wind speeds, low humidities, and it's been dry around here. So you got really good consumption of fuel. So, you know, prescribed fire accomplishes a lot. I think a lot of people think that it does a lot of killing, but there's a difference between like killing something with fire and top killing, and most people don't know that there's a difference. But really what you're doing is resetting this vegetation. You've got open sky due to the timber harvest and then due to the tornado, and so you had a young forest coming back. Great bedding cover, lots of woody sprouts, brambles, a few grasses mixed in, but you reset that vegetation. You didn't necessarily kill it. Most of these are perennial based now, and so they haven't emerged from the spring, but you killed that existing growth and they're going to re-sprout. So this is just a maintenance tool to reset the vegetation, keep it where it's most applicable to deer from a foraging and cover standpoint, and you rocked it.
Yeah, and then some of these invasives like Multiflora Rose that have been, some of them, most of them have been treated and killed this past summer, but anything that may have been missed or whatever, at least the fire will come in and knock it way back.
Top kill it, reset it. Some of that stuff was trying to leaf out yesterday, so that knocked it back pretty good.
Yep.
Job well done, I'd say.
Thank you. Earlier we were with Matt, and we didn't go through and identify what invasive species were on the farm. So I'm back here at my house, a couple hours away from our main farm, but we've got the same invasive species here as we have there, except they're more prevalent here. And I've been combating these for a couple more years than I have been there, and I've gotten a good idea of how to identify them and really just how to treat them or combat them. Some things have worked. There's been other things that I've done that have been mistakes and not worked. So I've learned a lot along the way, but I'm going to go through here real quick. I realize that it's wintertime and it may be the hardest time to identify some of these species, but this is when I learned to identify them. So if you can identify them now, you can definitely identify them during the growing season. So we'll go through and I'll just show you some of the species that I've got here and what I've done to try to knock them back or combat them. So the first one I want to talk about is bush honeysuckle, and I'm going to just get right into it. The biggest mistake we made here at my house is we came in here when we first learned about TSI and we opened up the canopy, but we did not address invasive species, and this is the main one that we have here, is bush honeysuckle. It comes from Asia. It is non-native to here and invasive, and by opening up that canopy, we just spread it like wildfire everywhere in here, and been battling it ever since. What you see behind me, I have not messed with too much. Right around here, I've cut some of the stumps and treated them, but back here, I haven't gotten to this yet. And so when we opened up that canopy, it just promoted it, and you can see on the forest floor here, there's not much growth. And in fact, the only growth that I'm really seeing in here is essentially bush honeysuckle. And the taller stuff is bush honeysuckle, so it takes over that mid-story as well as it grows taller. This stuff can grow up to about 15 foot tall. It's got a very shallow root system, thankfully, so that helps with control. But this plant right here next to me, I believe, has been hit with fire. I think that the top portion of it is somewhat dead, and then you can see new shoots coming up below. So it can get set back from fire, but it's going to come right back. You're not going to kill it. And there's a couple ways to go about treating it. Fire, like I said, will set it back, and it's helped control it over here where I've had a lot of fire. There's a lot of smaller plants, and I can easily treat that this coming year or fall. I can come in and foliar spray it. So with there being small shrubby plants over here and short, you can just come in with glyphosate mixture, backpack sprayer, probably later fall, I would say, and just spray the small plants with glyphosate or triclopyr. And then on these bigger ones, you can stump treat them. So right now, I can come in or early spring and just cut the plant itself. Then you've got a stump, and you can treat it right on that stump, right on the top of that stump with herbicide and kill it that way. This plant is very easy to identify actually when it is when it's not dormant. Obviously it's dormant now, there's no leaves, and it's the very first one in here, most likely the first plant that's going to green up or start to put on leaves. So late March, early April here in Missouri, it's going to start putting on little leaves, and that's really why it's so invasive, is it's going to crowd out everything else. Nothing else gets a chance to grow as the sunlight, is hitting the floor. This thing's greening up, throws a big canopy over everything else and drowns out sunlight below. It's one of the last, probably is the last, to lose its leaves in the fall. So late November, sometimes it could still have its leaves on. It takes some hard freezes to to cause this plant to go dormant, and it's a bad one. Birds spread the seeds. The seeds are little red berries that this plant has. Some of the bigger ones are just littered with them. They'll fall to the ground, and a new plant will start right there. The birds could also, like I said, carry it off and drop them somewhere else. And just kind of a cruddy plant. It's not very good for deer. There's really no nutritional value. As far as the cover goes, yeah, they have that mid-story cover, but on the forest floor you can see it's eliminating any forage for the deer and wildlife to feed on. So do your best to combat it. I don't think I'll ever fully eliminate it from here, but we can continue to try to control it and make this habitat here better than what it was beforehand. And with us opening the canopy, we've in fact made it worse right now. But managing this invasive species is top priority for us. It should have been top priority in the beginning, but that's a mistake we made, and we've learned from it. We'll continue to keep on keeping on with that. Another thing that I meant to mention on control is you can come in here with a hoe. It's called a stump hoe, and it just goes right into the ground. It almost looks like a pick, and you have leverage, and you can pop this plant right out of the ground if it's not too big. They've got a very shallow root system, so it's easy to do that. Or even these smaller plants, you can go through and just pluck it right out of the ground with that shallow root system. Pull them right out of the ground is like a day like today is actually a really good day if you can identify the plant, because the ground has thawed out. It's very damp right now. The soil's soft. You can just pull them right out of the ground. So that's bush honeysuckle. We'll move on to autumn olive. Here we have autumn olive, and I would say on this property and even at the other farm, it's not very prevalent, so it's early on, which means we should be targeting it because it won't have much of a chance to spread. And autumn olive is pretty easy to identify, whether it's dormant or even in the growing season, but along the bark, it's got all these gray scales along it, so it's easy to identify in that aspect. In the growing season, it'll put on red berries, very similar to bush honeysuckle, and it's got small green leaves. It's another one that'll green up early, I believe. And as far as controlling it or eliminating it, it's pretty easy, I would say. One method is you could use like a stump root, like I said, with bush honeysuckle to uproot it, or you could tie a strap or chain around it, rip it out of the ground with an ATV or tractor. Those methods work, but I would recommend only doing that during the summer or fall, because if you do it earlier on, like in the spring, the roots could break, and then you're still going to have a plant there to grow out of the ground early on in the growing season. So I wouldn't say that's the best. I'd say the best treatment to go about eliminating this would be to stump cut it and treat the stump with glyphosate or triclopyr, and that's going to kill the plant. If it's a much smaller one, this is a pretty good size one. They'll even grow bigger, but a much smaller one, you can just go in with glyphosate and foliar spray it. Just target a little area. With it being a small plant, should be easy to kill it that way as well during the growing season, I might add. So this is autumn olive. Let's move on to the next. Here we have Multiflora Rose, and this is a nasty one. This one's probably my least favorite to encounter in the woods or in the field, just because of all these nasty thorns that this thing has. I'm sure most of you have encountered it yourself when you're out hunting or whatever, or walking around on the property, and you get stuck with these thorns trying to walk through them. So oftentimes you got to go around them. But nasty bush, nasty plant. It can grow actually much bigger than this particular plant here, but this one's been hit with fire, so it's shortened up quite a bit. Obviously I didn't come back and treat it, but inside of here you can see the old skeleton even. But the Land and Legacy guys prefer the 1-2 punch is what they call it with Multiflora Rose. And so what that means is you'll go in oftentimes and burn an area with prescribed fire, and when you do that, it's going to top kill this Multiflora Rose. Just like I did here, why you see the skeleton. So you're top killing the plant itself. That just resets it. It's not killing the roots, and then you'll come back in with herbicide after you've top killed it, maybe like a month or two later, and treat it, spot spray it with glyphosate at about a 5% mixture rate. So instead of having to treat this big plant as is right now, you'll top kill it with fire, come back a month or two later, and the shoots are going to come up inside of the skeleton of the plant that's remaining, and it's easy to identify because it's right there next to the skeleton or the stems of the skeleton. You'll just see little shoots coming up, a much smaller area than this big plant. You'll hit it with glyphosate, targeted direct hit and then kill off the entire plant as is. So very easy to control with that, and I would highly recommend it. You can see underneath this that when this bush is not dormant and there's leaves everywhere, it's really drowning out the canopy below it. So it's a good one to eliminate from your property, nasty invasive species. Here we have Sericea Lespedeza. This one is only just one plant here, but on the other side of the farm here, there's an area where it's just taken over, and that's exactly what it'd do with the thousands of seeds that it puts off in the fall time. It just drops them everywhere, or birds carry them everywhere, and it'll eventually take over your pasture, open savanna. That's usually where it thrives. In the timber, not so much unless you've opened up the canopy significantly will you see it there. But this plant originates from Asia, and it was brought over here to the United States, I believe, for soil erosion control and grazing, which it is not really very good for grazing. It's not very nutritional for that. There's plenty of other species that are much more nutritional to cattle. And as far as erosion control, it is good for that, but with it being an invasive, it's going to take over. So I would highly recommend using many different native plant species out there that will help with soil erosion control over this one. Sericea Lespedeza is the invasive. There are many native Lespedezas, like slender Lespedeza, that looks similar to this. So as far as identifying Sericea Lespedeza, I would highly recommend making sure you do so before you go in and treat with herbicide. And herbicide is really the only way to treat this species. It's very hard to pull out of the ground, so you probably don't want to go that route. You're going to want to treat with herbicide in the summertime, depending on your region. It's just really a matter of when this plant starts to flower. That's when it will be most effective to kill off with herbicide. So middle of the summer here in Missouri, before it flowers, just treat it with glyphosate or Pasture Guard. Pasture Guard is probably the most or the best way to kill it off. I think its active ingredients are triclopyr and fluroxypyr. Those two active ingredients in Pasture Guard. So look for that brand, Pasture Guard, to treat Sericea Lespedeza. You'll just go in and spot spray if you've got a few plants here and there like this, and just lightly douse them with a backpack sprayer, and make sure you don't have a ton of runoff to kill anything around it. And then if it's taken over your pasture or savanna, I believe you could go through with a boom sprayer and treat it that way. But eliminating it is very important. It's one that will spread quickly with the thousands of seeds that this thing has on it. So yeah, you don't want that in your pasture or savanna. I appreciate you guys watching this video with our collaboration with the guys from Land and Legacy. I wanted to add to the end of this that I'm not a biologist, and I don't claim to be the know-all when it comes to plant species or land management for that matter. I'm just giving you the information that I've learned over the last 10 to 15 years, whether it be from YouTube or reading material that's out there on the internet, or from the guys from Land and Legacy. I've learned a ton. So take that with a grain of salt. I'd encourage you to go out there and watch other content out there, not just our channel, but from many others. There's a ton of stuff that you can learn from the internet. And don't be afraid to get out there and make your own mistakes. In fact, my mistakes have helped me grow tremendously, because those are the types of mistakes that I've made and I will not forget. You know, going in and eliminating the canopy, like I said earlier, and opening it up before addressing invasive species that were prevalent there, that's one of the biggest mistakes I feel like I've made in land management. I just set us back multiple steps by thinking I was doing good and actually making the situation even worse. But anyhow, I've grown from it. I'd encourage you guys to go out there and just get active with land management, whatever it may be, whether it's TSI, burning, eliminating invasive species, whatever. Get out there and do it. And if you guys want to learn more about this stuff, maybe in person, we're holding our whitetail workshop at the end of May, so May 31st, June 1st weekend here in Missouri, on our northern Missouri farm with the guys in Land and Legacy, from Land and Legacy, and we're going to be covering everything land management, and including hunting strategies as well, of how the two correlate. So I'd encourage you to check that out on heartlandbowhunter.com. You can get signed up there if you're interested, or even check out more details on that there. Another video that I'd encourage you to check out is the cedar eradication video that we filmed last year. Went in and eliminated monoculture of cedars, so just a cedar thicket, just pretty much only cedars. Knocked them out, like 80–90% of them. Followed up with prescribed fire, and the native species that came back in was phenomenal. So check that video out, and check back for more videos soon. Thank you.